In this video, we're going to fill out the 2024 election map using the 2020 polling bias in every state. Make sure you guys stick around to the end because the election map gets crazy. Let's get into it. So I've gone ahead and filled out the safe states for Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and the states that have not been filled out are the states that we are going to focus on in this video. So let's start on the West Coast with Oregon. Right now, the polling out of Oregon shows that Biden is up by 12 points. Factoring in the 2020 polling bias, it gets bumped down to a 6.8% win for the president, making it a likely state for Joe Biden. Then going down to Nevada, right now the polls have Trump up by 3.4%, but factoring the 2020 polling bias, it gets bumped up to a 6.3% flip for Donald Trump, making it a likely state for the former president. Moving down to Arizona, the polls out of Arizona show that Trump is up by 4.6%, and putting in the polling bias of 2.3% for the Democrats, the estimated result comes to R plus 6.9%, making it a likely state for Trump. Moving out to New Mexico, the polls out of New Mexico shows that Biden is up by 7 points, and then factoring the 2020 polling bias, it goes to a D plus 6.06, which would be a likely state for Joe Biden. And then Colorado, one of the fastest left-leaning states in the country. Right now, the polls out of Colorado show that Biden is up by 7.1%, but factoring the 2020 polling bias of R plus 1%, it gets bumped up to a D plus 8.1% win for Joe Biden, making it a likely state. Now we're going to move on to Minnesota. Right now, the polls out of Minnesota show that Trump is up by 1.6%, which is very significant because Minnesota voted for Biden by 7 points in 2020. And then also factoring the 2020 polling bias, the estimated result is R plus 3.7%, another flip for Trump by a lean margin. Then we go over to Wisconsin. Right now, the polls out of Wisconsin show Biden is actually up by 1.3%. Factoring the 2020 polling bias of 7.8% for the Democrats, Donald Trump is up by 6.5%, making that state a likely state for Trump. And then over to Michigan. Right now, the polls in Michigan show that Trump is up by 0.5%. And then when you put the 2020 polling bias into it, the estimated result comes to R plus 5.6%. Not a likely margin, almost a likely margin, but it's going to be a lean margin for Trump. Now we're going to move down to Georgia. Georgia was a state that was very Republican, but then flipped to the Democrats in 2020. Right now, the polls have Trump up by 4.4% in Georgia. Factoring the 2020 polling bias of D plus 0.94%, the estimated result gets bumped up to R plus 5.34%, making that a lean state for Trump. Now we go up to North Carolina. The polls out of North Carolina show that Trump is up by 5.2%, and then when you put in the polling bias, the estimated result is 8.3% for the former president, making the state a likely state for Trump. Let's move up to Virginia. Virginia was a state that Biden won by 10 points in 2020. Right now, the polls out of Virginia are showing that Trump is up by 0.2%, which is honestly crazy when you think that Biden actually won the state by 10 points. That would be like a 10-point shift to the right, but when you put in the 2020 polling bias, it gets bumped up to R plus 1.9%, which would be a flip for the former president by a tilt margin. Now, this is honestly just crazy. I really do think that the polls are off, mainly because of these odd things in Virginia and Minnesota. I do think Trump will come close in Minnesota and semi-close in Virginia. I don't think he's going to be beating Biden in Virginia and Minnesota just because they're very Democratic states. So that's one of the reasons why I do think the polls will be off. But nevertheless, this would be a tilt state for Trump. And then we go up to Delaware. Right now, the only poll out of Delaware shows that Biden is up by 11 points. Factoring the 2020 polling bias, the estimated result comes to 5.7% for Biden. Now, this would be a big shift to the right in Delaware. Delaware was a state that went for Biden by close to 20 points in 2020. So this would actually only be a lean state for the president. Then we go up to New Jersey. Right now, the polls out of New Jersey shows that Biden is up by 9 points. But when you factor in the 2020 polling bias, it gets bumped down to 4.5% win for Biden, making that state a lean state for Biden. Then we go over to Pennsylvania. Right now, the polls in Pennsylvania show that Trump is up by 1.7%. And then when you put in the polling bias, it's a 5.2% win for Donald Trump, making this a lean state for Trump. And then to New York. Now, what was really surprising about New York is a very Democratic state, but polls out of New York have been showing that Trump is coming close in New York. Polling out of New York shows that Biden is up by 7 points. Factoring the 2020 polling bias, it's just a 0.3% win for Biden in the state, which is really, really crazy. It would make this state only a tilt state for Biden. Another reason I do think the polls will be off this year, but if we factor in the 2020 polling bias, it would only be a tilt state for Biden. Then we go to Connecticut. Right now, the polls out of Connecticut show that Biden is up by 17 points, but then the estimated result of the polling bias is a 10.7% win for Biden, making this a likely state. And then to Rhode Island. Right now, the polls out of Rhode Island show that Biden is up by 20 points, but factoring the 2020 polling bias, it gets bumped down to 10.2% win for Joe Biden. Now, this would be a big shift to the right. I'm pretty sure Rhode Island voted for Biden by about 20 points in 2020. So this would definitely be a big shift to the right, as you can see in a lot of other states, making Rhode Island only a likely state for Biden, it's really just showing like the mood of the whole country and how it's really shifting to the right. Do I believe it's going to be on point? Probably not. I could see it maybe like a 15-point win for Biden, but if we take the polling bias, it would be only a likely state for Biden. And then we go to New Hampshire. Right now, the polls out of New Hampshire show that Biden is up by 3.7%. But what I thought was really funny is that the 2020 polling bias was exactly how much that Biden was up in the New Hampshire polling average. So the estimated result will just be a tie in New Hampshire. So we're not going to put this in the Democrat or Republican column because it is a tie. And then our last state, Maine. Right now, the polls out of Maine show that Biden is up by 2 points. Factoring the 2020 polling bias of D plus 3.9%, the estimated result is R plus 1.9%, making this a tilt state for Trump. And Joe Biden won this state by 9 points. This would be another close to 10-point shift to the right. So this would actually be a tilt state for Trump. Now, I did say that this is our last state, but we do have one more district to cover, Nebraska's 2nd district. Now, Nebraska's 2nd district was a district that Trump won in 2016, but then Biden flipped back into his column in 2020. Right now, the last poll out of Nebraska's 1st district shows that Trump is up by 3%. Factoring the 2020 polling bias, where it actually overestimated Republicans by 2.8%, the estimated result would be R plus 0.2%, which would be a very slim win for Donald Trump in the district. This would be a tilt district for Trump. So there you have it. Donald Trump would win 338 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 196 if the polls are wrong again, like 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button down below and subscribe. Comment your thoughts or suggestions in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.